the lost, and the damned, the foul slaves of chaos. The insidious lure of chaos is pervasive and all-corrupting. Of those who become ensnared by it, only the very strongest will reap the favour of the gods. The rest are swept into the ranks of the lost and the damned, traitors, mutants, and spawn of chaos, doomed to fight and die in their thousands at the whim of their fickle and uncaring masters. Those who fall under the sway of chaos take many forms. They may be human or alien or some foul crossbreed of both. In many cases, it is impossible to even tell what they once were. The stigmata of chaos worship corrupts all creatures into hideous mockeries of their former selves with twisted limbs and warped bodies, their flesh scored by wheals and sores, buboes and tumours, which are merely outward signs of the corruption within. The fall may be gradual or literally occur overnight. In general, those most recently lured into the paths of chaos with the promise of rich rewards are the least marked. Their ranks are made up of warriors, pirates, and renegades, who have chosen to turn against their kind in exchange for the promise of power. Many times over the history of the Imperium, entire regiments and whole worlds have been corrupted by chaos and turned traitor, becoming the most hated of all its enemies. The heretic may see the truth and seek redemption. He may be forgiven his past and will be absolved in death. A traitor can never be forgiven. A traitor will never find peace in this world or the next. There is nothing so wretched or hated in all the world as a traitor. Cardinal Crisden. Traitors may only evince minor stigmata, such as the markings of the skin or other disfigurements easily hidden. They often affect heavy garb or armour or robes, commonly replete with masks, helms, or hoods, to hide their shameful marks. They use blasphemous icons and forbidden runes to show their allegiance, as if their base betrayal can be set aside or removed at will. But the true followers of chaos know they are already eternally damned. Entire legions can be made up of traitors like these, like the feared warriors of the Blood Pact, or the infamous Traitor Ninth. They are commonly heavily equipped and may have icon-daubed tanks, walkers, and armoured vehicles to support squads of well-armed infantry. In time, those traitors who survive will devolve further, to join the packs of mutants which form the bulk of the largest legions. Among mutants, the mark of chaos is plain to see, with horned heads vying with gross distensions and inversions to produce the most bestial of aspects. Mutants commonly bear their marks openly, showing their dedication to the gods of chaos in the hopes of gaining attention for their deeds. Such armour and weaponry that they have will be mismatched and battle-scarred like its bearers. Among mutants, it may be possible to discern the influence of one or the other of the Chaos Gods. Mutants strongly dedicated to Khorne, the Blood God, are commonly thick-necked or otherwise burly, horned and or shaggy-haired, bestial-looking creatures. Those of Slanesh, the Prince of Persia, may be long-limbed and brightly marked. The hideous mutants of Nurgle display all the foul, bloating, weeping sores and bursting buboes to be anticipated from those dedicated to the Plague Lord. Zenchen mutants rapidly start to transgress physical description, as they warp constantly into shapes pleasing to the Changer of Ways. But they are the most likely to lose their humanoid form to sprouting wings, tentacles, and pseudopodia. The most extreme mutants bear little resemblance to men at all, be they bipedal, quadrupedal, or otherwise locomoted. Such mutants are often massive and bulky, but it is not known whether these are humanoids warped beyond recognition, animals touched by chaos, or the fusion together of several once distinct individuals into a massed, rolling, unrecognizable mass. probably all of the above. The legions of the lost and the damned are composed of the most vicious mutants and depraved traitors from an area of infernal space where chaos rules. Most famously, they swarmed out from the Eye of Terror, where the Imperium spills into the galaxy in a maelstrom of warp energy. The creatures of the warp have but one trait with which you need concern yourselves: that undying contempt for the Emperor. It is your task to quell the rebellion they preach, and the only sure way is to destroy them utterly. Qualtak Shiran. In this region of space, worlds exist where the laws of physics and nature do not apply, and the landscape is constantly shifting at the whim of the chaos powers that rules the planets within. Of course, since the creation of the Great Rift, a large part of the galaxy is now affected in this way. When Abaddon's Chaos Space Marines ready themselves for another raid or Black Crusade against the Imperium, the fiercest mortal slaves from the prayer gangs and cannibal packs of the demon worlds battle night and day, or whatever passes for it in their perverted realm, to fight their way aboard the transports. They believe a place fighting for chaos will be an opportunity to win the attention of the Lords of Chaos, perhaps even a chance to gain the favour of the gods themselves. More than anything, it is a way to escape the eternal torments of the Eye of Terror and re-enter the mortal realm. Other realms also spew forth other legions of the lost and the damned. Any region of space riven by the power of chaos will produce such hordes, be they the accursed pirate strongholds of the Maelstrom, the traitor planets of the Sabbath Cluster, or the benighted netherworlds of the Eastern Fringe. Any great chaos incursion throws up its own legions, as the most ambitious, warlike, and amoral fighters flock to its banners to carve their reputations, or to die trying. Heretics and traitors join triumphant chaos forces in the hopes of surviving by serving a new master. These find themselves callously expended to prove their worthiness to serve chaos, or to render up their souls if they have nothing more to offer. The righteous forces of the Emperor first came into contact with the forces of chaos in the legendary times of the Great Crusade, as the newly created legions of the Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's Space Marines, forged outward from terror. They liberated thousands of worlds. On the most corrupted by chaos, they found horribly debased mutants swarming like locusts, and possessed demon hosts by the score. Such befouled places were ruthlessly cleansed with fire and sword, temples and icons obliterated with melter bombs, monstrous living cities pounded by orbital strikes. In many cases, they were razed utterly, as commanders became too horrified by the madness they saw and chose to blast whole planets to dead ruin, in preference to letting it continue. On other planets, the benighted denizens had fallen into many and varied forms of chaos worship, subtler and more insidious. These, chaos-tainted, were silver-tongued and cunning and joined the Emperor's crusade, only to spread their poison further and betray their oaths at a time of their own choosing. Possession was once 9/10 of the law. It is so even today, but we must blind ourselves to the 10th that remains and was once human. Duty requires we put aside such considerations and root out uncleanliness in thought and deed. There can be no other course of action. No one can be adjudged innocent of compliance. Better to self-destruct than acquiesce. Inquisitor Enoch. In those times, the threat of the alien was perceived as the greatest of all, and the dangers of warp entities and uncontrolled psychers poorly understood by most of the Emperor's servants, despite his constant admonishments to the contrary. Across the widely spread legions of the Emperor's crusade, new allies were welcomed for the aid they could render in the great task of freeing humanity. Even mutants of particular strains, judged stable enough, were permitted to prosper and fight in the ranks of the Imperial army. This is a practice which remains to this day, although under drastically tighter constraints of genetic purity. than was once the case. From the curse of the mutant, may our Emperor deliver us. A morte perpetua, Domne libera nos. That thou wouldest bring them only death, that thou wouldest spare none, that thou shouldest pardon none. We beseech thee, destroy them. Extract of the Fide Imperialis, commonly known as the battle prayer of the Adepta Sororitas. As the Great Crusade reached ever outwards to the eastern fringe, recidivism and treachery constantly flared in its wake. Rebellious armies of traitors and mutants tyrannized worlds just recently liberated as power-hungry commanders, governors, and renegade space marines tried to carve out their own empires. Even after centuries of fighting such traitors, chaos resurged utterly during the cataclysmic Horus heresy as the Imperium was torn asunder by civil war. In those dimly remembered times, the lost and the damned trod upon the sacred soil of terror itself, dying in their millions at the walls of the Emperor's palace. From that far-off day to this, the Imperium has been continually plagued by the lost and the damned, from scrofulous hordes of mutants to treacherous armies. In spite of the best efforts of inquisitors and loyal forces everywhere, the lure of chaos remains as pernicious as ever. The combat capabilities of the lost and the damned are as variable as the myriad faces of chaos. A force like the Traitor Ninth, a full military unit recently turned to chaos, will be the equivalent of a fully equipped Imperial Guard regiment, with supporting Leman Russ battle tanks, basilisks, mobile artillery pieces, sentinel scouts, as well as other armour. While formidably equipped, traitors often lack the moral fibre of loyalist troops, as their command structure, officers and commissars will have been ravaged when they mutiny. Such forces are most dangerous in a ranged battle, where their heavy firepower can be brought to bear with little risk of hand-to-hand combat or close assaults. The greater hordes of the lost and the damned are poorly equipped. They bear a bizarre array of weaponry forged on demon worlds, everything from Baroque las rifles and autoguns to beast-muzzled heavy stubbers and flamers, but have little in the way of heavy weaponry. In contrast to traitor units, mutants must rely on sheer weight of numbers to overcome superior opponents. Packs of mutants are driven forth to overrun their enemies regardless of casualties, dragging them down in bloody wave attacks. In these attacks, it is the larger mutants and chaos spawn which pose the greatest threat, possessed as they are with the weight and strength to crush the most stalwart defenders. Any force of the lost and the damned may be riven with the horrors of demonic possession, its denizens freely opening themselves to warp entities in rapturous bouts of self-destruction. Worse still, the insane chants and tainted icons of the mortal followers of chaos can open up a path for demons to enter the physical realm. The tumult of the battlefield, the psychic screams of the dying, are meat and drink to these entities, and even the smallest crack in reality can open a way for the infernal hosts to manifest, hunt, and feed. The lost and the damned may be expended in their thousands by their unseen lords to achieve this single aim. The weak will always be led by the strong. Where the strong cry out against fate, the weak bow their heads and succumb. There are many who are weak, and many are their temptations. Despise the weak, for they flock to the call of the demon and the renegade. Pity them not, and scorn their cries of innocence. It is better that 100 innocents fall before the wrath of the Emperor than one kneels before the demon. First book of Indoctrinations. Most deadly of all are the insane demon engines which can be found spearheading the most important attacks. Demon engines are hellish fusions of forged metal and warp-spawned magic, living beasts charged with infernal life and driven by the insane murder lust of a bound demonic entity. Such creatures are heavily armed with cannon, flamers, and missiles, but still take a perverse pleasure in ripping apart their opponents with steel-shod claws. If Chaos Space Marines are in the war zone, they will usually be in direct control of the greater masses of the lost and the damned. They provide an elite striking force and the prime elements of a merciless command structure. The presence of such veteran warriors of the Long War makes the lost and the damned immeasurably more dangerous, their warcraft and unrelenting hatred lending the hordes a frenzied determination and reckless bravery which is a terror to behold. Of all the threats facing the Imperium of mankind, that of chaos is the greatest. The corruption of chaos can turn the very forces of the beneficent Emperor against themselves. The numberless hordes of the lost and the damned demoralize and pervert all they come into contact with. Of the lost and the damned, none are more loathed than the traitors. Traitor forces use their base betrayal as advantageously as possible, assailing vulnerable targets with surprise attacks before entrenching themselves against retribution in some ground of their choosing. Thus, the later stages of a campaign against the lost and the damned are liable to take on the aspects of a series of close sieges. All too often, the rise of chaos will result in a series of costly, bloody fights through hives and fortresses, as loyalists fight to purge the corruption and free those enslaved by it. In the case of a populist uprising inspired by chaos demagogues and heretics, the force will be less militaristic, more numerous, with people from all walks of life pressed into service with whatever arms and armoured units they can build or loot. Mutants and the repressed dregs of society are all too easily swayed into rebellion against the rule of the Imperium, styling themselves as an underground resistance or self-righteous freedom fighters. The ultimate nightmare for the loyal servants of the saviour of mankind is the corruption of a hive or civilized world, where traitorous forces can number in the millions. In the face of mankind's righteous retribution, some traitors and mutants try to escape into the hinterlands of whatever planet they are on, to form smaller guerrilla forces to plague loyalist forces for months or even years at a time with ambushes and raids. Wherever they can, traitors will attempt to link up with other invading chaos forces. Revolts are timed to coincide with the arrival of chaos warships in orbit to create havoc and confusion among the defenders. Imperial policy towards all manifestations of chaos is uncompromising. They are to be eliminated with all means possible, as quickly as possible. Even those who have witnessed the forces of chaos are treated with suspicion, as the tiniest seed of corruption can blossom into the corruption of entire worlds. We are at war, with forces too terrible to comprehend. We cannot afford mercy for any of its victims too weak to take the morally correct course. Mercy destroys us, it weakens us, and saps our resolve. Put aside all such thoughts. They are not worthy of inquisitors in the service of our Emperor. Praise his name, for in our resolve we only reflect his purpose of will. Inquisitor Enoch. And with that, I'll leave you there. The short one today. I'm just doing a bunch of short ones recently. How many have I? I'm mixing up tenses there completely. I'm just doing short videos for the next couple of weeks, and then we've got some bigger stuff coming through, story times coming. Thank you for watching. I love this. I love all this stuff. It really adds to the whole universe, and some of the quotes are like, sick. I like it. I love it. Anyway, I'll be back again soon with more stuff, and like I say, some bigger stuff coming up soon. Just doing some smaller videos now, because it's what I can do in the time constraints, and I've just got to get back into the flow of things, you understand. Love this stuff, love chaos stuff. It's fantastic. I love it. Yeah. I'll be back again soon. Thanks very much for watching. Please do give the video a like. Really appreciate that, and comment as well. These things really, really help the channel with the algorithm and everything. Can't say that enough. Really, really appreciate it anyway. And thank you for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this. You should do. It's pretty good, right? I love it. I love it. All right. See you later.
May the Emperor protect.